So, the second part of our chat, we're going to talk about hyper-personalisation, which is fast becoming, I guess, the new baseline for luxury brands, right? Hyper-personalisation means basically more of everything. So, more data, more interactions, more touch points, super personalised experience that are tailored to feel exclusive for each individual. Um, how do we see hyper-personalisation manifesting itself?
Yeah, really relevant.
Big question.
Big, relevant.
More.
I think for me personally, this year, Apple Vision Pro has been one of the best examples I've seen out there.
Super cool.
Yeah. In the summer, I took my son Charlie for a surprise Apple Vision Pro demo at the App Store. And the attention to detail of making that 10-15 minute moment the best it could possibly be was just outstanding.
How so? Like, why? How did they personalize it?
Well, I guess if you think of it from a kind of customer journey point of view, website, simple form, book a date, a time, and a location at one of the app stores. The one in Trafford Centre. No, it's Arndale in Manchester. Quick email confirmation, and then a sort of follow up a couple of days later, trying to just establishing some extra information. Do I wear glasses? And then off we went to the App Store. So as soon as we step foot in the App Store, there's a guru at the front of the store, asking us why we're there, welcomes us, personally takes us over to an entire island where we met another guru, Chris, who was going to take us through the demo. Charlie, my son Charlie sat down, I sat opposite, and then Chris started to explain what was going to happen, and then asked Charlie for his glasses. So they take Charlie's glasses, another guru takes it to a special device at the end of the counter. The device lasers Charlie's glasses and then is automatically sending Charlie's prescription upstairs to an Apple team upstairs.
Hang on, what, so that they could tailor for his eyesight specifically?
Yeah, so
Wow.
It just they didn't have to do that.
No, yeah, that's really cool.
The expense. The expense for just a short period of time, but they instantly taken all the load off the user and increased the quality of the experience for what was about to happen. So it just
And it's the super personalisation, right? Which is exactly what we're talking
absolutely tailored to his specific prescription, so he has the best 10-15 minutes he can possibly have.
Well, I guess from a transactional point of view, they bring you from an interested, voyeuristic kind of what is this through to, oh my gosh, what a wonderful thing! I need to buy this, right?
Absolutely, I think that, just that bit alone, super clever. And actually, another guru later on told me that upstairs, that they have over 1,000 lenses upstairs, just so that they make sure that they can cater for all the different variations of lens and prescription that they could possibly have, like on a busy Saturday afternoon, for example.
Yeah. Imagine the expense from Apple's point of view in every Apple store that's
globally
amazing.
Yeah, you think about that globally. So a real attention to detail from a service and a customer experience point of view. But then Chris, the guru, he was amazing. Carries on talking to Charlie, sets expectations, learns a little bit more about him and his like for gaming, so that he can kind of use that to tailor the experience later. And then while we're chatting, again, another guru comes round with his own custom Apple Vision Pro on a platter, serves it like a course from a 10-course taster menu at a Michelin star restaurant, and then off we go. So Charlie, he puts it onto his face. I mean, it still feels a little bit strange that we're strapping 3,400, 4,000 pound devices onto our faces, but the race for the face is coming. But we got into the demo, and Chris talked Charlie through that demo, and it was just one of those priceless moments, those wow, magical moments you don't get very often when interacting with a new technology. I'll never forget that. But from an end-to-end point of view, super personalised, simple, personalised, just for those 10-15 minute moments of magic.
You sort of feel centre of attention, and that's what we're talking about.
I mean, he literally
tailored around the customer to make them feel that exclusive.
His mind was blown away. You could tell by the reaction on his face, but the whole experience just made him feel like an absolute superhero.
Takes pester power to the next level, doesn't it? I think we know what Charlie's getting for Christmas.
Yeah, they've done a good job there.
Back to the beauty world, which obviously I know really well. Hyper-personalisation is absolutely something that all beauty brands need to be having as their kind of North Star, I think. And actually, it would surprise you how often a beauty brand does look at something like Apple, of like, how have they created that scenario? How have they, especially actually in the retail environment, because beauty started in the retail environment. Obviously, you trusted that beauty advisor that you went in to see on a Saturday of what to buy, and then recreating that connection with the customer online has always been quite a challenge in the beauty space. WGSN, which is a huge kind of resource in the beauty space, they put hyper-personalisation, it'd be helpful if I could say it, wouldn't it? As the number one trend for 2025, and I think we will see more and more brands trying to play into that space and look at both the on and offline experiences, and hopefully how they join up to really create a point of difference. The beauty world has exploded in terms of the amount of brands out there doing a version of the same thing, whether it be skincare, fragrance, makeup. And I think personally the ones that will survive are the ones that are playing into that hyper-personalisation, because it's connecting that it's connecting with the customer. It's creating an experience that gives long-lasting belief and value
and trust,
and
trust in the brand.
Absolutely. A couple I can think of just for you guys. I mean, you may know them, but I don't know how up on your personalised foundation you are, for instance. But we'll talk about that later. But there's a brand called Decipher who essentially do a face scan. So they create your own personal foundation shade, concealer shade. Once you have gone through the process of creating that, are you going to go and buy a different foundation from a different brand? No, probably not. If they get it right, albeit they have one chance for their tech to get it right, I would say, because if they mess it up, I think you can do a few variations and you can upgrade it for the summer or whatever. But I think they're doing something really interesting. They're not just going out there with 20 shades going, go for your lives, find the one that might work for you. We've all got very different skincare needs and tones and whatever. They've gone, right, we'll really use technology to power hyper-personalisation for colour, which I think is really
amazing,
interesting and really cool.
And being able to build an experience around just developing that personalised product has value in itself.
Exactly. So they create a one-to-one communication essentially. So their emails are about creating something for you. And connecting with you. It is more expensive than your average price of foundation, but they know that they're going to get the repeat purchase if they get it right, I guess. Yeah. Then another one that I saw is a brand called their Algorithmic Perfumery, or Every Human it's called. But essentially theirs is a bit of offline tech. So it's this huge machine where you can
still got to get made, right?
Stuff's still got to get made. Where it's essentially you can personalise your own fragrance. So it's the most amazing bit of theatre I've seen in an Oxford Street window, that's London Oxford Street, just FYI, but where they've got it in the perfume shop, and you go in and you have what is a 45-minute probably experience, possibly even longer, picking out what you want to smell essentially, and picking out the right scents for you. And then you get to a point where you could have tried millions and millions at this point, but you essentially personalize your own fragrance. They then keep that all on file for you. You can then use that fragrance profile to buy just fragrance or candles or room scents or whatever. But I think what they do really well is they've kind of gone away from the come in and smell all the perfumes in the shop.
Yeah.
It's come in and create your own, so you own the process. I think you can even name it what you want to name it and whatever, but your connection to that fragrance then would feel very, very personalised. And I think with all of this, I must have told so many people about that experience for me.
So you effectively become a brand ambassador.
I become the ambassador.
Yeah.
You're the ambassador for the Apple Vision Pro, or Charlie is. I'm the ambassador for Decipher Foundation because I found the right shade. It's less about the buying because an influencer told me to. It's more around the micro-influencer world of, I've had this incredible brand experience. I think you would love it as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe not foundation purchasing, but you know what I mean.
It's just a few more examples of where those opinions are formed through experience as a differentiator.
Exactly, and I think it's so hard to navigate how to choose in different categories and beauty. As I said, there's thousands and thousands of brands out there. So creating an experience where you create that initial connection, and then it actually goes back to the first time you go out makeup shopping or skincare shopping with your mum or your friends or whatever. So many people used to buy the brand that they were introduced to, buy their first, by their mums or whatever, because they'd created that connection. That's how they'd been recommended, and they stuck to what they knew. And I think newer brands have got to really challenge that. They've got to create a scenario where you're choosing because they're creating something hyper-personalised for you.
Yeah, and I guess hyper-personalisation in that context is a way of trying to create those new connections, right? And again, it all comes back to that customer journey and a joined-up way of thinking, kind of end-to-end, right? So the examples there for Apple Vision Pro, and your examples as well, Cara, they all have an element of technology in there, but it is very much customer first. I think from a technology perspective, again, you've got this ever-growing toolkit of super, not super intelligent, because that means something slightly different, but really, really good semi-intelligent, AI-driven tools that you can start to use to understand. You don't have to sit there and map out, okay, I've got customer profile A, customer profile B, customer profile C, and start to map out the journeys for each of those, throw it out there and hope it works. What you've got is the ability, with the technology that's available right now, and it's only going to get better, to be able to do that without having to go through that process. You still absolutely need to know, what you want to deliver your customer and how your customer wants to feel. You still need to make informed decisions on it, but actually technology allows that hyper-personalisation in a much easier. Well, let's face it, it wasn't available to brands before, and technology's now made it available.
You tapped into my favourite soapbox moment there, actually, in terms of the customer profiles, because I think I've now been around the block a few times in different beauty brands, and it drives me wild that so many brands, if you ask the simple question, who is your customer, will tell you the same thing and they think they're innovative because they know their customer profile. You know, they're 35 to 55, they live in an urban environment with 2.4 children, they earn, you know, X amount of money. No, they probably don't. Or some of them might, or if they all do, they're still hyper different within that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where brands that are thinking from a hyper personalisation point of view first, it doesn't matter how old the customer is in a way, it doesn't matter where they live specifically, it's about what they want from you as a brand. And I think if hyper personalisation and AI and all these tools help us move away from that kind of tick box customer profile, then it's only a good thing.
Yes, but again, I think it still starts with that availability of data, knowing your customer, you know, really well. And again, I'm saying customer, and it's customer. You know, we're back to the kind of profile conversation, but actually knowing, you know, if you can collect, you've got to have the data in the first place, but then you've got to collect it across so many different, probably from so many different sources, across so many different touch points, and then you've got to join all that up together. Do it well, and you get hyper personalisation right. And if you're marketing the right thing to the right people and engaging with them in the right way, then you'll thrive. Get it wrong though, and there's a lot of risk, because obviously the more hyper personalised you go, if you get something slightly wrong, it can go way west, right?
Well, I think a couple of things there, as you know, the kind of lots of getting it wrong, and lots of customers having similar opinions of their target customer. I think that reflects how some brands are currently talking to their customers. I mean, you know, they in a way, even though we have the tools and the technologies to personalize and hyper personalize, I think the reality is that we're just still living in a world of spam, you know, where we're sending something like 360 billion emails a day with barely any engagement from those emails. We've got something like 250 million apps being uninstalled within the first 30 days of being installed. And I think that reflects the behavior of brands just pushing lots of communication, generic communication across multiple channels at customers that are already overloaded with lots of communication. And I think where you build the real trust, we touched on it earlier, is where you actually recognize that customer, understand that customer, and actually make the hard decisions about what not to send the customer. So reduce the amount of communication, reduce the amount of products that you're trying to sell to that customer, and build a more one-to-one relationship with them.
Focus on the things that are going to
matter
to that individual,
and build trust and you know, and an affiliation with the brand that way.
Yeah. And then coming back to your communication point and the fact that we do, and I think it's evident to everyone nowadays, pretty much everyone's online, that we do live in a world of spam. And I think that's one of the downsides of this kind of pace of change of technology, and especially things like, you know, generative AI nowadays. Read ChatGPT, but there are many more on the market. But yeah, the pace of change in terms of you know, what you can do within such a short, I mean, bear in mind, ChatGPT was only released 2 years ago, and already you've got tools that can, you know, draft and create, you know, emails, and this contributes to the problem, but also could be part of the solution, right?
So you know, there's now so many possibilities to personalize, but actually it's becoming so much easier to generate generic content at low cost, you know, and there's almost there's two ways to approach it, and I think the brands that get it right will take the more trying to learn the customers, trying to build that one-to-one relationship.
Yeah. So Dean, you talked about you know, brands trying to create trust and that kind of deeper connection with consumers and customers alike. How do brands start to do that? What do brands do in order to be able to increase the amount of interactions that they have with their customers?
I mean, we've talked about personalisation a lot, hyper-personalisation, but when we're in that space, it feels like we start to, bridge into loyalty and membership schemes. And so I think that becomes part of the discussion, really. And I guess as we move to a kind of cookieless world, those loyalty programs have become much more important to brands as part of their kind of wider first-party data strategy. So, loyalty just provides that opportunity to build that deeper understanding of the customer and wrap interesting loyalty programs around that.
Yeah, definitely. I think from a brand point of view, every brand wants to have the best loyalty program, the best membership program, and it does come from wanting to own the data on the customer, wanting to drive from that first purchase through into successive purchases, especially if you're a subscription brand, of course, to keep that subscription in place, to keep rewarding for that subscription. But I think the core in luxury is to move sort of away from that points mean prizes space and deliver more of a connective experience, so back into that hyper-personalisation. So Alo Yoga, I think I've mentioned them before, but their loyalty scheme very much focuses on yes, there are points, but the points can be redeemed on sustainable value initiatives. So it's not just around a discount off further clothing or a class.
But again, aligning with values, which is what we were talking about before.
Yeah. So it pulls the customer into more of the wider value versus just kind of, because I think you've got to, because I think I couldn't even tell you how many loyalty schemes I'm part of. I couldn't tell you.
There's a lot of loyalty and membership fatigue out there.
100%, and brands make it super complicated too. It's like they give all these names for these different tiers and different points and different, unless it's easy, I can't really particularly, I don't have the time to manage it all. I'd need subscriptions and a loyalty scheme manager for all the ones that to really get the full value out of it. I think to really acknowledge doing it properly from a luxury brand point of view, it's got to be about added value and experience. It's got to be an invite to events. It's got to be extra product or trialing product first before anyone else, or the ability to review or have a voice in the brand's kind of next launch or whatever. That's really what creates a special kind of connection. In the beauty space, there are so many loyalty programs, and some of them are excellent, some of them are points based, some of them are value based. Sephora Insider is, I guess, Sephora are the poster child, I guess, for loyalty, and I think they've done something that potentially other multi-brand stores have struggled to do, which is create the connection to Sephora as a brand with the brands that they retail within, and they do something essentially that rewards their insiders for reviewing product and for repurchasing product. They've got an excellent sampling scheme, so you get the free samples, but the personalised conversion from sample to full-size purchase is really strong. And I think as they've grown the programme and as they've grown the data around what people purchase, how often they purchase and where they purchase, they've been able to personalise the experience and personalise the value that each individual gets out of the loyalty scheme. So, and that's the reason you go back, right? I think Sephora have done incredibly well. They've only just entered the UK market. Boots were the poster child for the Boots Advantage card scheme, for driving a reason to buy from Boots. I don't even know my Advantage card number anymore. I don't know, I don't have that connection anymore because it wasn't continuously driven. They know so much data about what I used to purchase, but they didn't ever fight for my custom back, and they could have evolved that into so much more of a membership value scheme versus just you get X discount when you next buy something. And I think
it's a little bit behind the curve, because one of the challenges that we talked about was collating that data. Boots have the majority of it in the first place.
They've got so much data, right? They're an example of having so much data about customer behaviour and potentially not using it in the most optimised way. Yeah. Hopefully they've got something up their sleeve.
One example that springs to mind that's starting to get accolades recently is Hugo Boss's XP loyalty program. So it's a kind of it mixes a traditional tier-based and points-based system with kind of new Web3 and NFT technologies. So customers get the opportunity to purchase unique digital tokens, and they can be used virtually. And so again, it's like we were discussing earlier in the podcast. It's starting to attract a younger customer base and move beyond that kind of just core tier-based, point-based system. So that's an interesting one to look out for.
But but you've got to have the right tech to really support that. There's an example. That I'm a Liberties shopper, and I'm because they have a beauty drop scheme, which is you pay, I think it's £20 or £25 a month into a account essentially for credit that equals your credit to shop on the site, and you get a sampling box every quarter, I think it is. So it's a great way of discovering new beauty brands. I'm a beauty nerd. It's a brilliant way to kind of keep up discovery. Liberties are known for their kind of discovery of new brands and empowering new brands. But they have a lot of data on me, but they have my shipping address. But on my customer profile, they haven't got that as my personal address for some reason, because it's not ticked in the right way or whatever. And I shopped in store recently and had a problem with them finding my loyalty scheme number or whatever, and therefore being able to use the credit. And so went to customer services, which I highly recommend their customer services, by the way. I think it was a really positive experience. There were a whole bank of very knowledgeable people who are very aware of the technical restrictions, I would say, about the offline and online not talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, yeah, we know what the problem is. We'll just shift your address into your profile address. You've got my address. So from a customer point of view, you've got my address. You know where I live. Why would you not? And that was how they identify, your customer identifier is your postcode. Right, okay. So that was the whole problem. But I've never had any problem buying online. But the minute I try and buy in store, they've lost me as a customer because their system, which they fully know, hasn't quite. So and then therefore they're not acknowledging me as my customer profile or understanding who I am from what I've bought in the previously, because not
connecting the dots.
It's a complete,
Yeah, it comes back to that joined up view, that kind of one view of the world, the world being the customer, I guess in this case, so an off-putting experience, I guess, because they haven't joined up that whole customer experience.
I mean, I'm still a loyal customer, but going and stepping into store, which is I probably would do 1 in 20 times that I shop at Liberty. I would normally shop online, but stepping into store and going, okay, well, I'm not even acknowledged as a customer in here is definitely a negative that I'm assured they're working on.
Good. So, given the what we talked about in terms of hyper-personalisation, given that we think it's fast becoming the new baseline for luxury brands in particular, what should brands be thinking about? How should brands start to approach this? How should they start to put this into practice?
I think there's some real strong takeaways. So learning more about your customer, on the behaviours that they are showing across the different channels and touch points. Because the tools are there to enable you to do that. But you've got to use that to curate those little micro moments and experiences
100%.
across those the different channels and touch points.
Learn versus assume as well.
Absolutely. And then I think from what we talked about earlier, I think with personalisation, I think often less is more. And so kind of it's not about more data, more product. I think it's about taking the hard decisions to actually tailor communications to a customer.
Yeah, I'd say probably my key ones are designing or iterating a loyalty scheme, move beyond points from a luxury point of view and create experience and kind of lasting moments with as a brand, because points are more short-lived. It could be a hybrid version, but I think being able to offer something, especially if it comes back in like the Aloe Yoga example of aligning to sustainability values or your brand values, I think that's super important because people feel involved in who your brand are. So I'd say move beyond the points. I'd say community is key because you can't be controlling the conversation at all times with any brand, but you can curate, to steal your word, a community that support your brand, that are your sort of micro influencers, who can pass on the positive experiences that they've had within their own personal network. Gamification in the right way. There's another sort of blow up on LinkedIn. I've seen a number of posts on recently is around the kind of spin to win. Does that fit into a luxury space? But actually, at Christmas in the heart of Covent Garden, shopping in a shopping environment, in a physical shopping environment, why can't Jo Malone have a huge spin wheel to win some stuff, even if their core customer is dropping hundreds of pounds on a candle and possibly isn't interested? It's about theatre. It's about in the right place, right time. I think it's quite nice. And then I guess just using what you know about the customer to position your values in the right way, and then position sort of values and brand before positioning product, I would say. From a luxury point of view, I think that's really important. And back, I guess, to Jaguar, we were talking about that example where actually what they've done is this whole rebrand is about positioning the brand first. The car's not even in the room, as it were, yet. They're talking about brand and a complete revisit of who they are first.
Yeah, excellent. I think for me, kind of hyper-personalisation, you shouldn't, just because the technology's there to do it doesn't mean you should do it. So as you were saying, Dean, to paraphrase you or to take it to a different dimension, less is sometimes more. But basically, it's don't be driven by the tech, don't be driven by the possibility, be driven by the customer, as ever with this type of stuff. So make sure you've got the right data, make sure you can turn that into the right information, insight and knowledge, more importantly, about your customers. So what that means is interpret your data in the right way to turn it into information, interpret that to turn it into knowledge about your customer, and then look at that whole process as an end-to-end piece. Look at it as a customer journey and look at what supports your intended outcome for your customer. And then you've got to make sure that you are iterating quickly on it. Make sure that you not just making a huge investment on this transformation program and then leave yourself nowhere to go, or be set up that as a brand you can't then tweak here, pivot there, whatever it needs to be. Because as I mentioned before, both the thinking in terms of a luxury brand perspective, but also the technology is evolving so fast in this space. You don't want to be spending millions of pounds on implementing a transformation of your customer journey, of your loyalty program, or whatever it is, and then find that actually 6 months later it's out of date and there's nothing you can do about it rather than start again.
Yeah.
So going with your eyes open to that would be my advice.
Well, and your most valuable customers will be the ones that join your loyalty program first, because they're your VIPs. They're the ones that see it first. So if you're not doing it in the right way for them, you're going to lose your most valuable customers first, not last. So I think putting customers
Make sure
first
it's
is
right.
exactly. Yeah.